My name is Mulugeta Tedla, and I'm a Canadian citizen, currently working as a full-time college professor at St. Clair College. I also involve myself with activities of community activities, such as in the Association of Tigrean Communities in Canada as a volunteer. I do that on my free time. ATCC is actually an establishment in Canada created by voluntary Tigrean associations. What they did is just there are about 15 associations under that umbrella, and 10 of them are big city community associations in Canada, from east to west, from Vancouver to Quebec. All these big cities have Tigrean community associations, and there are also five uh, task-oriented organizations under this umbrella, and then we call that Association of Tigrean Communities in Canada. I really put myself on as a member of the Windsor community, Windsor Tigrean community. I was representing Tigrean Windsor Tigrean community into that umbrella, and then I had a chance to be elected as one of the directors to lead this establishment, ATCC, Association of Tigrean Communities in Canada, and three of us are the directors of that association. I am the chairperson, the current chairperson of that association. Actively, we involve in advocacy for our people in Tigray. And the major concerns we have are like returning displaced people to their homes, financially support some victims wherever we can, victims including homeless children and sexually assaulted Tigrayan women in hundred thousands, of course, yeah. Continuation of aid to more of the more than 6 billion people in Tigray. We also would like to advocate a withdrawal of foreign Eritrean forces and neighboring Amhara forces who are still occupying Tigray even after the Pretoria peace agreement. We also voice our concerns into transparency of criminals who were part of the Tigray genocide to be charged or be responsible for. And we organize the Tigrayan diaspora to participate in rebuilding Tigray after the war because there are good and hopeful situations right now after the Pretoria Agreement. The situation of Tigray is not that great, but it is actually better than the war that they had the last two and a half years, which started in November 4th, 2020 and lasted on November 2nd of 2022. It was stopped because of the Pretoria Peace Agreement. So the TPLF and the federal government of Ethiopia signed a peace agreement, or at least silencing the gangs that can develop into peace agreement later on. There are still outstanding and burning issues that the international community must take care of. I want to mention a few. One of them, I can say that it is millions are still internally displaced, including those refugees in neighboring countries such as Sudan. They have homes back home in Tigray, but their homes were taken by the invading forces, Amhara Fano militias and the Eritrean forces. Aid to Tigray is interrupted right now, currently, due to alleged claims of WFP and US aid that those organizations claim that food aid has been stolen and found being sold in the market. Millions are even starving because of this. There is no food aid going into Tigray now because of this incident. And that situation is extremely dire and should be resolved. As a person, and many of our Tigrayan advocacy groups really would like the investigation to continue while the supplying of food aid also should continue. You cannot just punish the victims of this war just merely because there was some indication that food was stolen. So I think it's a double slap for the unfortunate Tigrayans. And also, Eritrean foreign forces and the Parafano militia are still causing atrocities in all parts of Tigray that are occupied by them. So there are parts of Tigray in western Tigray, in southern Tigray, in eastern Tigray, which are partly occupied by those invading forces. So that situation have complicated the Pretoria Agreement right now. And the main reason why we don't have full peace in Tigray is because these invaders are not are still occupying the land of Tigray, and the people who were supposed to be back home to their homes cannot be placed to their homes due to this occupation. So I think we all demand the international community to do something about this urgent issue. The among the displaced people. I am a teacher. It is a great concern I have. Many children have not gone to school for more than 3 years. In other parts of Tigray, students are back to school, even though it's very incomplete, like no resources at all. These schools are damaged, destroyed, and looted by the invading forces before. But then I think the kids are gone back to school in the areas that are not occupied by the invaders. But those displaced people, which are in millions, their kids are still sleeping on the streets of Tigray or on some shelters where their kids cannot go to school. So that is also a very disturbing for Tigrayans. Pensioners have not been paid their pension for the last 2 years. Today, actually, I saw integrate TV that the pensioners, usually older people, really rally in Makala by the pensioners were in a rally in Makala demanding their payment. Can you imagine for 2 years not getting a penny, even though it is the money that you worked for all in your life? So that's also a burning issue that has to be resolved. There is not enough security for civilians to function as in the pre-war situation. That is another concern. Even though there is a free part of Tigray where Tigrayans are to trying to rehabilitate, even to peacefully live or to conduct their daily lives as they used to prior to the war. But there are organized crimes now. There are groups that are robbing people. So I think this insecurity is also a very important issue to be resolved because prior to the war, Tigray was the most peaceful area. It was attractive to tourists because of the peace that it enjoyed. No more. Even in the free lands, there are concerns of security. There are organized crimes. So this should be also be corrected. Or they are threats for the sovereignty of the country. And the war, there were other factors. There was a question of the election that Tigray did the election on and so on without the approval of the federal government. And so there are other causes like, or there was the army, the national army was betrayed in Tigray and so on. I can't go through all the details, but in my opinion, I think it's a conflict of ideals of the people of Tigray and the other ethnic based political parties who are established in Ethiopia as one group versus the other group who are not approving of this ethnic based federalism. And then that is the main conflict, so the core of the conflict. And then the war started against Tigray. I was like a victim myself during the military regime of Ethiopia called the Derg. I'm talking about maybe 39 years back. I was a student in Addis Ababa University when the security forces at that time arrested me for being a member of the TPLF, but I was not really. I was not a member of any political organization then. I was a young man doing my degree. I was detained for 3 years. And very unfortunate. I never was sent. Like there was no court appearances. There was nothing. Just detained, they shut down for 3 years. And then after 3 years, they come and they let you go. After a release, I went back to finish the one semester I was left up. And then after finishing, then I worked 2 years in a Catholic church school. It's a kind of grade 12 plus 2 years of skilled. It's a kind of technical college. And then I worked for 2 years, and then there were threats again. The then government was killing people and throwing down the dead bodies under the bridge everywhere, like around the capital city and the small cities, suburbs. So many people died then, Tigrans. And then I had to run to save my life. And I went to Kenya. In Kenya, I went to Kenya in 1990, June 1990. I went, just to make the story short, I went to Kenya and Thika refugee camp. I stayed in Thika for 2 years and 2 months. And there was a Canadian company called World University Service of Canada. We're looking for refugees, but students could be potentially students for education in universities in Canada. They came to our refugee camp, and then I applied. And I was lucky. I was considered to be one of the candidates, and fortunately was sent my application to University of Windsor. The University of Windsor picked me among the other applicants. And then it was the University of Windsor, which was my sponsor. 1992, I made it to Canada. In August 1992, I came to do my master's in mathematics, and then I was enrolled in that. I was really thankful for WUSC and University of Windsor for saving my life. Of course, it was the lives of my kids and my family. And then I came here on my free time. I helped establish the Tigrayan community of Windsor and wrote the bylaw, and we went into all registration and all of that. And the main objective at that time was just to really be able to help our Tigrayan community be integrated with the Canadian community. So we were one of the objectives is to help refugees coming to Canada, and we help Tigrayan, more like originally Tigrayan students, not to be dropped out of high school or elementary school. So we help them. We give psychological attachment or networking to a community. We will have get together, and so it's originally the objectives of the Tigray community of Windsor was created for local advantage, like for our community to be integrated in Canada, so we will enjoy life and the challenges of integration won't be so hard. But right after the war, that has changed completely. In fact, even before the war, we were all involved in rebuilding Ethiopia, rebuilding the country. For example, I was a very active participant of the construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. I was among other Tigrayans and Ethiopians were advocate for this. So I wanted the dam to be instrumental in poverty reduction in Ethiopia. And I did my best. And not only me, just many others. So we had what we call a committee, a subcommittee in Windsor to raise funds for the GERD. And then we did significant, significant improvements like in raising funds. That's why we see the dam growing up. We were very optimistic of that this dam will play a big role in terms of uh, providing energy and light to the Ethiopian people and to Tigray as one. And for development purposes of Ethiopia, as Ethiopia is not as advanced as economically viable state. So we tried all as diaspora people of Ethiopians, we try to build Ethiopia as much as we can, help that. So our activities were limited to that before the November 4th, 2020 war against Tigray. And then you can imagine that just like the Windsor Tigrean Association, there were many others in big cities of Canada like us right after the war, and the war caused the suffering of the Tigray people, and it was so elongated. It really was a systemic war, which really harms our people of origin as Canadian Tigrayans or as Tigrayan Canadians. Really try to involve in helping becoming the voice of our people in this war. So a peace agreement could come. We have what we call ATCC, Association of Tigrean Communities in Canada, and there are a consortium of 15 associations, 10 of which are Tigrayan community. And we have also what we call task-oriented associations. These 15 associations are joined in hand in to hand to, to to create an alliance so they could discuss the concerns of their people of origin and the concerns of the people, or the Tigrayans who are in Canada, so they can comfortably get integrated with the Canadian culture and Canadian law. This is an amazing network through Canada, which we were we were able to establish. And of course, a similar concept we have what we call ATAT, Alliance of Tigrean Associations in the Diaspora, which is globally. What we do is we approach MPs in Canada to raise the issue of our people, like our people of origin, related to the war or bringing about peace in their lives. And we always have done letter writing campaigns. We did a lot of letter writing campaigns to MPs, to ministry level, to ministers in ministries of Canada, to the Prime Minister, and to many, to UN, AU, and the EU, UK, USA, and so on. Like we did a lot of rallies, which is organized by the 18 organizing committee in Ottawa, in Toronto, in Vancouver, in Edmonton, in major cities, in Calgary, and all over big cities. We did all the demands of our people as voices. They were all organized by ATCC in Canada. We also met MPs. We sat down for raising the concerns of our people, and many MPs were very helpful in terms of raising the issue to the Canadian government so they can pressure those who are concerned in this war. We also sat down in presenting out the cause of our people with the, what do we call, the global office of Canada, like the East African Global Office. So we were able to convey our message to them that Tigrayans are suffering because of this war. And so we pressed on peace to become imminent. So I think when I say that the diaspora Tigrayans were part of the Pretoria Agreement, I think I know the Tigray people fought a great deal, and it was a meter fight that the Tigrayans have fought. They lost so many of their children, but actually it was supplemented by the diaspora fight, or we were instrumental in raising the issue of Tigray during this war to the international community using letter writing, using rallies, and using all kinds of possible connections we have. So I think that's what I meant by saying that the Pretoria Agreement is also, we are also stakeholders on the Pretoria Agreement. It was our activity and pressure and rallies that brought up the attention of those influential countries like the US and the EU and the UK and African Union has or pressured both parties to sit down for a peace deal. We are disappointed in a way because we haven't seen a lot of progress. But anyway, we tried our best, and then there are some positive aspects from MPs who really caused these discussions at the government level, the Canadian government level. We are very thankful of those MPs who really took us serious, and we think that some measures were taken in a way, allocating funds to Tigray people for aid and so on, are particularly done because of the reasons that we voiced. But like I said, political decisions, I didn't see much, and we were always disappointed on that one. Canadian and international media were really biased against this war. The Tigray War was one of the deadliest wars in the world, even worse than the one in Ukraine. But a fraction of the media coverage was not even given for what we voiced. I think the lack of media coverage from the Canadian media agencies and the international ones was the most disappointing. It's very unfortunate. There is no comparison in terms of the deaths of civilians in both. I don't want to compare the Ukraine. The Ukraine war is a very unfortunate thing to happen for Ukrainians, and I'm very supportive of Ukraine. But what I'm saying is that the Tigray were ignored by the international. We as Canadians, we should really press on the rights of human rights of everyone in the world, not just only specific places in the world. Tigray was a huge mistake. This of the media never covered the story, and due to that, so many people died. They waited. The influential countries and influential organizations of the union, they did not press hard to stop this war. It was even, I can tell you, Dr. Tedros, who is the World Health Organization head, who is originally from Tigray and who is actually Tigrayan, has been crying out loud on the media. So then the Tigray war has to stop. Nobody cared. Nobody even, it's very unfortunate that happened. What I consider that one of the most challenges. I blame the Canadian media of bias against the Tigrayans or the African lives that have been killed for up to a million. There are cases that we brought to the Ministry of Immigration and Foreign Affairs Canada about that refugees in Sudan and other neighboring countries who were victims of the Tigray genocide, particularly the women who were raped, sometimes gang raped, but not no consideration was given to help them. We were hoping for special consideration for Tigrayan refugees of the world. Nothing. I think Canada has given special consideration for immediate and help immediate refugee conditions in Afghanistan, in Syria, in other places, but never been like, why not Tigray? This, I mean, the gravity of the problem is actually worse in Tigray. How is it that politicians ignore this? Is it just because they don't want to? I mean, they don't. It makes you wonder: is that because it's an African problem? Okay, so that is another case of the immigration issue. We still feel. I would rather to mention that Sudan now is exposed to its own conflict. And then there are about 70, 80,000 Tigrayan refugees in Sudan where they don't have any place to go. They're stranded. They're done. So now it's the right time for the Canadian government to act, at least to lift up some of those victims, the women, the mothers who are suffering in those refugee camps, and they cannot go back to Ethiopia. They cannot go back to Tigray. The lands have been occupied. Tigray is cut off between Sudan and Tigray. There is what we call Western Tigray, which has been occupied still by the invading forces. If the Canadian government is serious, it's time for it to consider to give a special consideration for refugees, for Tigrayan refugees in the Sudan. I believe that could be very important to consider. I believe that the Pretoria Agreement is the result of not only the bitter struggle of the people of Tigray, but also the diaspora's active participation and voicing to the international community. We also reached out to the UN and all countries in the world using advocacy letter writing to bring peace to our people of origin. We were instrumental, not as much as we wanted due to lack of media coverage, in bringing the cause of the people, the cause of our people. We displayed their suffering through rallies and other advocacy methods. In Canada, some MPs approached by our association played a big role in the Canadian government to pay attention to the Tigray conflict. As a result, some food aid has been allocated for the betterment of our community in Canada and globally, and help to rehabilitate Tigray for the future. We have well-established organization now and created a network of Tigrayans that could be used to get together and help rebuild Tigray. So I think these are what I think consider as successes of whatever participated as part of the group of Tigrayans in Canada. Okay, the most important thing I think is the withdrawal of invading forces by the Eritrean invading forces are still in Tigray. The Amhara invading the neighboring states forces are integrated. It's supposed to be. The Pretoria Agreement has mandates to push out those invading forces out of Tigray. And there are also constraints for the TPLF to comply. The TPLF has complied, but the invading forces are still in Tigray. So the number one burning issue to Tigrayans right now is actually that these forces to be out of Tigray. And why wouldn't the international community force these people or these forces out of Tigray so that about 2 million displaced people will go back to their homes? About so many thousands of students are going to be to their classrooms. So I would mention that as number one priority. The second priority, I could say, due to some allegations of food theft, aid has been interrupted. So I want the aid to continue because even there is a theft, then the aid should actually, you cannot victimize the people twice. They are already victims of the war, and then they cannot be victims of aid because there is somebody who stole the aid. So I think WFP and USAID should start the aid immediately.